Greetings, Missouri Mid-South Conference. I bring you greetings from a very chilly conference office in St. Louis, Missouri, where for many of us in all different corners of the Missouri Mid-South Conference, it has been very cold and chilly. For some of us, it's been snowy and a little bit icy in these past few weeks. I don't know about you, but in cold and chilly weather, I like to bundle up. I am not a cold weather gal. I like to make sure that I get my sweater, my jacket, my shawl, and I put it on to feel comfortable. It, in some ways, gives me a sense of safety, assurance that I'm not going to have to go out and shovel snow and all of those things. And so in this time, we remember and honor those who live in the outdoors and the chilliness of that weather. In many ways, though, I've been thinking about this shawl and the chilly weather and returning to the reflection on our conference ministry theme for the year, Building Courageous Relationships, especially in how we are called to be courageous. Because I want to suggest this for today, that sometimes our barriers that we put up ourselves or that others put up in terms of building those courageous relationships, the barriers are like a warm, comfy shawl or jacket where we kind of barricade ourselves in this self-created warmth so that we don't have to feel the chilliness of life. But as we know in our sacred stories, Jesus teaches us that the way to be building courageous relationships with people that we know and love, with people that we don't know and are strangers, and especially with people with whom we disagree and may not really like, is that we cannot put on our comfy, warm shawl and blanket and protect ourselves from those that may feel chilly to us. The writer and sociologist Brene Brown has written a new book called Dare to Lead, in which she talks about the one quality, as she's done research over the years, the one quality of strong, healthy organizations and leaders is courage. When leaders are willing to be courageous and take risks and be vulnerable with themselves and with their organization and with society. And she talks about that what we do sometimes in order to not take risks and not feel the fear of the chilliness of life or a relationship or circumstance is that we armor ourselves. And she describes it as armored leadership. And so I want to read a few of those because what she posits is that our work as leaders, as organizations, I would say as local churches and as a conference, our work is to be willing to remove that armor, whatever that armor may be that self-protects us from being vulnerable in relationship with one another, and then that prevents our building courageous relationships. And so what I'm going to offer is what she describes as armored leadership, and then her answer of daring leadership, her suggestion of what it takes to be courageous in our leadership. And I invite you to hear this not only as an individual, but in your local church, or maybe in the Missouri Mid-South Conference. How have we as organizations armored ourselves from the chilliness of relationships and the unknown and fear and death and all of those things? And how might we live into these daring leadership qualities that indeed invite us to be building courageous relationships like Jesus himself? So armored leadership number 1 is driving perfectionism and fostering a fear of failure, that you have to armor yourself with being right all the time so that you don't fail. The daring leadership quality to that is modeling and encouraging empathy and self-compassion. Armored leadership number 2, working from scarcity and squandering opportunities for joy and recognition. How many times do we as churches and as the conference begin our conversations on our reality with, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough people, we don't have enough, we don't have enough. What Brene Brown says is that the daring leadership quality to that is practicing gratitude and celebrating milestones and victories. Let's celebrate that God has still called us to ministry and mission, and we may have to be a little bit more resourceful, but doggone it, we have mission and we have purpose because God has not left us yet, and God is not through with us yet. That is courageous leadership. Armored leadership number 3 is numbing. Doing whatever you have to do to not feel, so that you don't have to feel the chilliness of the reality. Daring leadership quality to that is setting boundaries and finding real comfort. Sometimes there are moments when we need to have that comfort around us, but also setting the boundaries that it doesn't happen all of the time. Armored leadership number 4, propagating the false dichotomy of victim or Viking, crush or be crushed. And the daring leadership reflection of that is practicing integration, strong back, soft front, wild heart. And what she says there is that it's that image of that our back is very strong, but too often we want our front to be the strong, self-protected. But in daring leadership and building courageous relationships, it's about a soft front and a wild heart. Armored leadership number 5, being a knower and being right. You protect yourself with always being right, having to have everything and say exactly what is right. Daring leadership number 5, being a learner and getting it right. Armored leadership number 6, hiding behind criticism and using that as self-protection. Armored or daring leadership number 7, making contributions and taking risks. Instead of using criticism as self-protection, be willing to make contributions and be willing to take risks. Armored leadership number 7, hiding behind cynicism. Oh, that will never work. Oh, we tried that 10 years ago and there was no one who came and it just didn't work. Daring leadership number 7, modeling clarity, kindness, and hope. One of her phrases that she says is, clear is kind, unclear is unkind. Armored leadership number 8, using power over. You will do this because I said so. Daring leadership quality number 8, using power with, power to, power within. Armored leadership number 9, hustling for our worth. we've got to be in there, and we've got to be the ones who are always doing and being, and we're on the stage, and we're always doing that because we're hustling for our worth. Daring leadership, number 9, knowing our value. The ones who really know their value don't have to hustle for their worth because they're already grounded in that reality. Armored leadership, number 10, leading for compliance and control. It must be done this way. Daring leadership, number 10, cultivating commitment and shared purpose. Rather than, I am the pastor, we're going to do it my way, and this is how it's going to be. You cultivate that commitment of a shared purpose. Why are we doing this? Our mission statement says this. Armored leadership, number 11, weaponizing fear and uncertainty. Well, if we don't do this now, we're going to close our doors and this church is going to die, and it becomes that fear that weaponizes the reality of where we are. Daring leadership, number 11, acknowledging, naming, and normalizing collective fear and uncertainty. That may be one of the possibilities, but there are also other possibilities. As we talk about it, we normalize it, we acknowledge it, and then we move on. Armored leadership, number 12, rewarding exhaustion as a status symbol and attaching productivity as self-worth. Now that could be the minister who never takes a day off and or who answers and checks and sends emails on their day off. The church member who comes and tells you all of the things that they have done for this church this morning before they even started worship. It becomes a status symbol. Daring leadership, number 12, reflecting on that, modeling and supporting rest, play, and recovery. I would say this especially in our churches for those church council leaders who have just rotated off. We need to bless them in taking some Sundays off. We need to bless them in play. Our churches need to play. And sometimes we don't do that very much because we're so focused in armoring ourselves with do. Armored leadership, number 13, tolerating discrimination, echo chambers, and a fitting in culture. Daring leadership, number 13, cultivating a culture of belonging, inclusivity, and diverse perspectives. That takes courage. It takes courage to be in a community where you may not agree. In my previous church, we were such a diverse community that we had a book study, Bible study on guns in America. And as open and affirming as we were, it was pretty diverse. And we had to set some kind of boundaries in order to be building courageous relationships, in order to hear one another and be engaged with one another in that way. It was only when we cultivated that culture of belonging and inclusivity and respect of others that we could talk about our views, very diverse views on guns. Armored leadership, number 14, collecting gold stars. We do this, we do this. Our pastor does this. Our conference minister does this. Daring leadership, number 14, giving gold stars. There is something very engaging and wonderful to honor those who are doing the really hard, ongoing work and ministry of the church. And people who receive that recognition and gold stars of thank you, do appreciate it deeply. Armored leadership number 15, zigzagging and avoiding. Daring leadership number 15, straight talking and taking action. And finally, armored leadership number 16, leading from hurt. Either hurt of the moment in that relationship or hurt from years, sometimes decades, sometimes generations ago. It's really interesting sometimes as I go into churches and suggest maybe there could be a conversation about shared ministry with the church just blocks away. But because of a disagreement 10, 15, 20 years ago, that possibility is still off the table because that is a part of the hurt. And the armored leadership, daring leadership number 16, in reflection to that, is leading from heart. That takes courage. That takes a willingness to be vulnerable. I invite us to think about, wrestle with, rumble with all of these. How do we armor ourselves? How do we let go of those qualities and leadership possibilities of armor in order to be courageous? How are we building courageous relationships? How are we willing to face the chilliness of a relationship in the community, in the church, with ourselves, with God? And how are we willing to rumble with that vulnerability, taking off the armor and being vulnerable and courageous? Because only then will we truly be following the ways of Jesus in offering God's love to all. So this is our homework for the new year of 2019. As you install your new church council leaders, as you begin to prepare worship services and missions and ministries, as we as the Missouri Mid-South Conference begin to plan for different ministries and different opportunities, our question that serves as our foundation should be, how are we building courageous relationships? What pieces of our armor do we need to trust in God and let go? What types of daring and courageous relationship do we need to make ourselves vulnerable to in order to truly be who God has created us to be? I can't wait. Thank you for this ministry together as we are building courageous relationships. In the name of God who created us, the Christ who teaches us to love beyond our imagination, and the Holy Spirit that breaks open within us in the chilliness to offer divine love. Amen.